The upcoming State of the Nation address is highly anticipated. It's the first such address by President Cyril Ramaphosa since the formation of the Government of National Unity. The economy continues to face many challenges as well as opportunities. Quite apart from talking about various strategies to deal with different issues, the hope is that the plans are actioned. Well, to discuss some of his expectations and even suggestions for SONA, I'm joined by Professor Andre Roux. He's an economist at the Stellenbosch Business School. Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us. So, since President Ramaphosa's last SONA to the nation last year, the economic challenges remain largely the same. Low economic growth and our very high unemployment levels, among other issues. What matters are you hoping that he'll be speaking to in more concrete terms?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon to your viewers as well. Yes, certainly, I think the rules of engagement have changed dramatically since a year ago. If we think back to his talk a year ago, it was to a large extent a pre-election kind of talk. Hopefully this time he'll be talking as leader of the country, not as leader of a particular party. And hopefully it will reinforce or certainly assure us that the Government of National Unity is intact, its robustness is intact. Because from a market perception point of view, the GNU has probably been one of the best things to happen in recent years. In this, having said this, I think it's important that he gives us more clarity, more practical meaning to things that become rather controversial and worrisome for many people, such as the Land Expropriation Act, such as the BELA, such as our involvement in DRC, and such as the National Health Insurance Bill. We need to be assured that these things are not going to derail the Government of National Unity. Then, of course, turning to international affairs, hopefully he'll give us a very clear way and indication of how he's going to deal with the Trump factor. Because this too is creating all kinds of uncertainty and potentially economically damaging issues. So hopefully more about that. But then when all is said and done, the time for wishless and mollycoddling is come and gone. He's got 4 and a bit years to leave a legacy hopefully not one of promises not being filled, but of meaningful improvement in the economy and the socio-economy.
Yeah.
It's time to get down to basics, such as, it was mentioned by Mr. Steenhuisen, such as improving our transport and logistics, such as making sure that we don't get load shedding in future, such as basics such as education. Our education system requires a total overhaul, such as labor market reform, which might be unpopular, but we cannot tolerate an unemployment rate of 30-something%. So hopefully it'll be, as I think Mr. Steenhuisen used the word, implementable. So no more promises, no more wish lists, no more mollycoddling, no more politicking as such, but getting down to a meaningful, implementable, doable. Because, you know, when people say, and he might say tomorrow, that we are looking forward to an economic growth rate in the next few years of 2%, well, that's a sad indictment. It means we're looking forward to mediocrity.
Yeah.
That should not excite us. 4 or 5% should excite us.
Professor, let me come in there. So South Africa is now holding the presidency of the G20, and President Ramaphosa has given the world a sort of wish list of what he's hoping to achieve while holding this baton. No doubt he's going to be referring to that in his speech. But what sort of long-term economic benefits might we derive from this as ordinary South Africans?
Well, I mean, everyone ought to benefit, but one could perhaps argue rather cynically, and I use the phrase in the right, in a different context, but charity begins at home. I'm sure many South Africans might take interest in what's going internationally, but when all is said and done, if I am without a job, if I'm living in poverty, if I'm on the wrong side of the inequality gap, I don't really care all that much what's happening elsewhere in the world. And that, I think, is the way of thinking you also need to embrace. I'm not saying you should abandon grandiose plans, of course not, but not at the expense of getting the job done here.
Yeah. Now, one of the threats that central banks and economists have warned about are Donald Trump's America First policies, which may result in disruptions in trade and higher inflation. What advice would you give to help mitigate factors like this, which we ultimately can't control?
Well, yes, you're quite right. You're talking about things such as trade tariffs, and also if Donald Trump gets rid of all those so-called illegal immigrants, the cost of labor in China might go up, which would bring about inflationary pressure. There's even the possibility, and this was mentioned last week by the Reserve Bank, that inflation might start rising in many parts of the world, which would require an increase in interest rates. I think we need to trust our own Reserve Bank, our own central bank. Amidst all the problems we've had in this country over the last few years, institutionally and otherwise, the Reserve Bank has stood tall and proud. Not always popular, but they've managed our monetary system, our monetary variables, in a very admirable way. And they enjoy a great deal of respect for that. So I think they are wise to these things. They'll always be cautious. The government in particular errs on the side of caution, which is not a bad thing. So I think we need to trust them to manage those things as best as humanly possible. Right. I don't think we're going to see a massive increase across the world in inflation, by the way, but it might just be a slowdown of the relaxation of monetary policy.
All right, Professor, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for your insights. That was Professor Andre Roux. He's an economist at the Stellenbosch Business School.